May the 5th.
Okay. Is he ready? I'll call the April 18, 2022 meeting of the City Council for the City of Lake City to order. If everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation to be given by Councilmember Eugene Jefferson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity for this council to serve our citizens, our community, and our county. We thank you for our accomplishments and for those challenges that we are now facing, Lord. We pray that you will direct our minds and that we will make those decisions which are pleasing in your sight and that will be in the benefit of those that we serve. And as we stand, we pray for our law enforcement, our first responders, and all of those that are in uniforms, wherever they are. We pray that you will protect them that as they protect us. These blessings asking in Jesus' name. Amen.
Ms. Sykes, please call the roll.
Mr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Jefferson. Mr. Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Witt.
Here.
Mr. Dial.
Here.
Mr. Coverline.
Here.
Chief Butler.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened this public meeting. Since 1968, the city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous while addressing the city council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There's only one approved manner of addressing the council, that is to be recognized and speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or a firearm while the governing body is a meeting. On proclamation, we have a National Arbor Day. It says National Arbor Day, April 29, 2022, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable source, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our community increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. Whereas trees, wherever they're planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, Stephen M. Witt, Mayor of the City of Lake City, do hereby proclaim April 29, 2022 as National Arbor Day and urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden their heart and promote the well-being for this and future generations as we celebrate the 12th year of the City of Lake City being a Tree City USA designee. Okay, we have minutes from the March 30th special meeting and the April 4th, 2022 regular session.
Now we will minutes of public. For March 30th and April 4th.
Okay.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Next is approval of the agenda. I don't have any changes.
So move, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda is published. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Next is public participation. Mr. Bowden.
Mr. Mayor, I'll pull one. I just speak on items that I got marked on this.
Okay, I don't have anybody else wanting to speak under public comments, so we'll move along. Approval of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay. Presentations, David Kraus, Columbia County Manager.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for letting me be here today. We have two housing programs currently. One is an emergency repairs housing program, which I think is similar to what you're proposing. And we also have a community development block grant housing program. People get them confused sometimes. The key is the emergency repair program is open to both city and county residents, whereas the CDBG is only open to those people that live outside the incorporated city limits because that's a HUD regulation. So, but mostly I came to talk about the emergency repair program and talk about how we administer it. We developed an online application. And all you have to do is log onto the website. You can get a paper copy as well. So you log into the computer system and it takes you to a map so you can determine where you live, whether it's in the city or outside the city, or in this grant, it doesn't really matter. And it also ties to then emails that it sends out and notifications so that people know what's going on. The key is we have one person in-house to help people fill out applications, because there's just a lot of people in our community when they get into documents and financial documents just need help, somebody to help them go through the process of doing it. And they'll review the application, they'll call them up and they'll say, can you get this document or that document? So you have to have somebody, and ours is a temporary employee, we get through Express Services, Express Employment, and that person's job is to help them get their applications into the system. Once their applications are into the system and they're determined that they are eligible, we hire a contractor, Guardian Community Resources. They provide a gentleman by the name of Antonio and his staff. And basically for $2,500 per house, they take over the project from that point forward. They will actually do the initial observation, go out to the house, talk to the resident, see what's wrong, see what the problems are, itemize it. But more importantly, they'll write up a very specific scope of work. Because it's one thing to say, I need a new roof. It's another thing to go in there, and if you're gonna write specs that a contractor can bid on, do we need to replace the trusses? Do we need to replace the eaves? Is there wood rot? All those details have to go into the scope of services. So you need somebody with technical expertise to do that. Typically in the past, we would have used our building department. But if our building department is issuing the permits and reviewing the permits, they really shouldn't be writing the scope of work and saying what work needs to be done. In other words, if you're guiding the work, overseeing the work, you can't really evaluate the work at the end of the process. So Antonio does all that. He writes the scope of work. He then takes that scope of work out and he bids it. And he has a pre-approved list of contractors that all attended a pre-approved, they had a meeting where all the people that wanted to work on this project could. So they established a list of vendors that have qualified and meet HUD standards because we want to be consistent. And so once he gets his scope of work, he can go to that group of people and say, each of you give me a quote on it. And he'll come back with 3, 4 quotes to determine which is going to be the lowest bid, the lowest responsible bid, and move forward. And then not only does he manage the contracts and oversees the signing, but he stays with that homeowner through the whole process to make sure whoever that contractor is that's doing the work does the work correctly and according to the scope of work. Because a lot of times these homeowners aren't in the building business. They don't know. They need somebody to make sure that if Mr. X construction company or Mrs. X construction company comes out and says, I'm going to rewire your electrical panel, that it is done and it's done correctly. Of course, then it would have to go through the building process in terms of getting your permit and your permit approved before finalized. And then, of course, he coordinates and monitors all the payments for us. So we kind of oversee it, but we intentionally chose to go that route, and each thing that he does has a different dollar amount tied to it, and I can leave you a copy of his contract. Not to exceed $2,500 per house. Obviously, if you do less work, it doesn't require certain things, he doesn't charge as much. So, but the maximum amount per house is $2,500. And we felt that this was the easiest way to do it to make sure the homeowner is guaranteed quality work and that they're not getting ripped off by some construction company, not that any construction companies would ever do that. And because, you know, quite frankly, like I said, it separates them from the building department and gives expertise where we as a county would not have. And that's pretty much how we do it. Any questions?
Anybody got questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'll go.
Go ahead.
I had some questions. So I know we've been discussing this for quite some time, and your boards agreed to do it through that system where we could just allocate it. And I think you said your guy could link it to our website. Is there a way we can act on that same contract, or do we need a separate contract with the Guardian Community Resources?
That would be up to you and your attorney. But you could always, I guess, piggyback on it, or we could expand our current contract and you pay us. It just depends on how you feel best structure your agreement.
I think the least we have to do on our end would be the best, but
Essentially, it can be piggybacked upon if it was competitively procured. If the total amount in a fiscal year is anticipated to be below the threshold, it would be another way to just go ahead and piggyback on it. And then there was another option, Mr. Kraus mentioned, where the city could reimburse the county. That would not require any competitive procurement either.
and so going back to now the meeting last week, you guys, your board, I believe, allocated a little more funds to this program. Is that correct?
Yes, they took $250,000 from our business assistance program and $250,000 from our individual assistance program.
So that brings the total to $1 million,
That is correct.
and that's out of the 12 plus million that you received in the ARPA funds.
We received 13.9 million in ARPA funds. The way ARPA funds are working currently, you can claim a one-time standard deduction, if you want to call it, for lost revenue. So what we're doing is we're claiming the standard lost revenue thing that's in the Department of Treasury rules. So that money that we're getting is actually reimbursed to us. So at that point, it is county funds that have been reimbursed to the county.
That's right. So
There's
you are,
less regulation.
so just looking at it, you're a little more than what, a little less than 12%? And I think that's similar to what we were allocating in the first tranche. What I foresee is when we get our other 3 million, allocate another 250, like we had talked about initially. So I think our program would probably be beginning about $500,000 if the board agrees on it, but we don't have all our funds yet, unlike you guys who've got them all up front. So another thing is we might want this to be expandable. I know you and I had talked about, I know I talked to Mr. Dial about this having the same parameters as the CDBG grant that we're gonna hopefully pursue in the future. So it would change a little bit. I know what we had first talked about. So we're looking at an age of 62, and like we talked about, adding veterans and people with fully disabled people in the household. So I think that's pretty similar to what you guys are doing.
That is correct.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of questions. I think it's a good thing. I'm glad you went forward and got your board to agree to that. I know Mr. Dial's been working with you on it since about February 8th, I think was the first conversation right after we talked about it on the 7th. So I'm glad that this is a good case where we can work together. And I like it because it's gonna help save us some funds. We can put more funds into the repairs.
Again, I agree. I appreciate, that the county is helping us out in, during these trying times. But my concern is, I've conversations with several people that they applied for the assistance, met all the requirements, but still having to jump in hoops to get the assistance. And so maybe you can, I can't say anything about the county, I'm talking about the city now. I just talked to a young lady on my way here, said she has all her information that was required, and she still hadn't heard anything. So like I say, I just want to make sure that if the person meets the qualification, get the assistance that they need.
Absolutely. And we did struggle at first trying to make sure we got all the paperwork right and everything else. So there was some confusion there, but yeah, we definitely want to get it out there to the people that need it. Absolutely. And we'll try and cut as much red tape as we can.
Appreciate you, Mr. Krause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I had several people that signed up for 5 and 6, which is pretty much the same thing, so we'll just start, Mr. Bowden.
Mr. Mayor, I really don't have one. It seems that one that we had anticipated, and I hope, being there about 1156 Northeast Baskin North Drive, I happen to be in attendance, Mayor and Council at the County Commission meeting when they discussed this, and every member of the Board of County Commission was in agreement. And so it seems to me that it's a very positive thing. I ain't see no fault in it. And so, I don't want to be redundant, so I support the
Thank you.
process.
Mr. Warren?
So that's the one. Mr. Mayor, thank you, Council. I don't want to be redundant. I think it's a program is one that myself and many other community members we fought for to get a part of the workshop agenda, as you remember, Mayor. And so I'm glad to see it's finally coming to a head. And I appreciate the Board of County Commissioners and David Krause being a part of trying to help the city navigate through the process of getting this done. And it would be remiss of me to say that I do appreciate Council Member Sampson's remarks about hopefully adding an additional $250,000 to it. My father and all of my uncles and my 2 sisters, they serve their vets, and to add that piece in is extremely critical. And then I have a sister that suffers from Down syndrome and other disability family members. I'm not saying that they need it, but that exists. And so to be willing to include them is outstanding. And I look forward to us getting other money to put the other $250 in. I think it's gonna really make a major impact on the community, and people are gonna greatly appreciate this forever, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree with the additions and all. Davion Jones?
I'm good, Mayor.
Okay. We've got it, on item 6, is there anything that y'all wanna do tonight or any further, or is that pretty well covered, Mr. Hill?
Oh, go ahead.
I think that pretty well covered what I was concerned about.
Okay.
Do we need this, I mean, if we want to piggyback on their program, do we need a motion for that? Because I think that's, and my recommendation would probably be to do that, because I think that's gonna make the least amount of paperwork. Or we can just-
If you make a motion and we get a second, then that just,
I would make that as a motion.
okay.
I'll second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Do we want to attach a dollar figure on the motion?
It's $250 currently is what we had agreed to before. I would be okay with modifying to go ahead and add the other $250 when the second 3 million comes in. So we're putting a similar percentage in that the county is on their side. So I would add that to the motion if that's acceptable.
Mr. Hill, you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Sykes, call the roll, please.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
on this subject, we will work with the city administration and work with the county to determine whether or not it can be piggybacked in one of the fashions I mentioned earlier. But also, if not, then bring back an alternative, but we'll also need to adopt the guidelines, even though we'd be mirroring the counties. But we can do that I presume, at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7, discussion possible action meeting decorum. This is something that's just gotten way out of hand. We're the laughingstock in North Florida. I hear it every day. I walk in a grocery store. My Swans guy today was talking about it. We gotta do something. And if it takes just hammering it down till we get to the bottom and we can just run a simple business meeting. Like the man said last meeting, he said city business is boring, and it should be. So I'm gonna set a workshop on this, and we're gonna try to set some rules and get this thing under control and be a boring meeting and tend to business, because we got a lot of business to do, and we're doing good with it. But we're I think the perception is worse than the reality of, with the state of the city, but we've got to do something. Mr. Warren, you want to speak on that?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I always hear about what people out in the streets always say, and we normally call those the street committee. Nonetheless, they're citizens too, but they're not out here at the city council meetings in the room dealing with the current issues. Most people that I know, at least from the position in which I come from, normally stand at this podium, Mayor, and no council member can deny this if they're honest. We're normally here to fight about the neglect and the inequality. I'm 41 years old, and it has gone on before I was born. And all we're asking for is to be treated equal in some of those concepts and ideals. I was told by a group of politicians out of Belle Glades, Florida, two things happens. Either you're on the menu or you're at the table. And so if the predominant black community in which I live continue to be on the menu and not at the table, then we get left behind there. And so 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, when you see us at the podium, we're trying to be at the table because we understand that dollars are gonna come into Columbia County and Lake City, Florida. But if the black community is not at the table and those dollars comes in, for some reason, we don't even be thought of. We don't get thought of. And so it's a voice coming from the podium to remind the council in many cases that, hey, we represent about 50% of the city population. We exist, we're human too. We want some of the money. We've been neglected for decade after decade, and we want our community to look just as good as the next community. And so if people want to call that a bad look, then I just think that they're on the wrong side of history, Mayor. Our conversations are going to get heated, and we're going to have a little bit of debate. I think that's all a part of the First Amendment. I think there's room on both sides. If there's a need to bring it down a notch, absolutely. But sometimes people are passionate and we get a little heated, and sometimes things do get a little out of control. But I think we're all adult enough to rein that in, and I don't think we have to call a special workshop. I think people are man enough to say, hey, Mayor, if this is the way that you don't want it to be anymore, then call it. And we can get in line. We've done it before. So I don't think we should change anything. I think you just say, hey, look, guys, we're all grown for the benefit of this community that we all love. I think you guys wouldn't have reigned if you didn't love the community. I don't think we'll be standing up here if we didn't love the community. And so for the love of the community, we just all get along and try to do things in decent order moving forward, Mayor. That's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bowden?
Mr. Mayor-elect, Mr. Warren, my concern frankly is that if you have this meeting, that the intent is to make it better. And make it better in terms of not silencing those of us who are adamant about our community. Often in the past, what I've found, Mr. Mayor and Council, that when people come up with these kind of ideas, you're responding to somebody in the community who don't have the decency or the nerve to come here and criticize the decorum from this podium. So I don't care about that personally, you know. And the idea that we're the laughing stock of the community, I'm not sure that the people laughing at the people at the podium. Frankly, I get as many people laughing at you all as they laughing at us.
Might be.
They say,
I said we might be.
yeah, I know, man. I'm telling you the truth. You know, I can say mad about what you said, but I'm just telling you that everybody don't see us at the podium as the problem. There are people in the community who see those who sit up there as being the problem. You know, I don't come up here just to argue to be arguing, debate to be debating. When I stand up here, I'm standing up on an issue. When Mr. Warren or Ms. George, anybody bring up something, it's something that concerns me. He said he's 41, I'm 72. Some of the same thing we talking about now, I was talking about when he was born. Right up here, over there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when you say we want to make it boring, the only way you can make it boring is you make it fair and you make it consistent.
Absolutely.
And that's the only way. So, and boring don't mean non-attendance. So the idea to make it so boring and so bland that people don't want to come, then the next thing you can be advocating that we don't have it on YouTube. You know, so I think the more sunshine, the better it's going to be. I don't see a need for the workshop, but if you have one, I hope you would allow for public participation.
Thank you. Okay, next item is discussion, possible action, city manager position. I did speak with Ms. Norlock, and she's looking into some people. I think there's a misunderstanding with, I think Mr. Henson that was here, that she had a list of new prospects. She doesn't. She's talking to several that may be available. I think one kind of was, but found another job in between here. So she's still looking, but, Mr. Sampson, seemed that he wanted to be added on the agenda, so Mr. Sampson.
I agree what you said about Ms. Narlock. There's no more applicants as far as I know. I mean, I've not spoken to her since the last meeting, but she's normally good about reaching out if there are applicants. But since the presentation last Monday by Mr. Hanson, I've been reflecting on some of the points he brought forward, and he had some good points. First, we need to act to fill the city manager position in a timely fashion. We're on 9 months now. It's been too long. It's harming our ability to attract the top candidates. Second, we need to offer salary and benefits commensurate with the scope of the job. That was another point that Mr. Hanson made last week. Third, we need to do what's in the best interest of the city, allowing us to move forward in preparing and implementing a strategic plan. As a council, we have an opportunity to move forward without delay and hire a city manager. There's already been a top flight candidate that's been interviewed twice, including in person. He's a well qualified for the position, and that candidate's Glenn Adams. And I would like to make a motion that we offer the city manager position to Mr. Adams, including the following: employment to commence on or about May 15th of 2022, base salary of $160, relocation expense reimbursement up to $10,000, entitlement to all benefits offered to the highest classification of a full-time employee, including medical, dental, vision, life insurance, disability, insurance, retirement savings, annual leave, sick leave, and tuition, and all benefits begin on the first day of employment. Additional benefit of 2 weeks of annual leave in addition to the default annual leave provided for full-time employees in the classification plan. Individual laptop, tablet, and software, mobile phone, city-owned vehicle for business use, and life insurance equal to the annual salary. Business expenses related to the position of city manager, including travel, professional memberships in local associations, professional memberships in professional associations, and continuing professional development and education. A severance package that, if terminated without cause, would be 20 weeks of salary and benefits at the then rate of pay, payment of accrued leave time, and an annual evaluation based on goals set during the workshop with professional facilitator or consultant. And I would like to make that as a motion.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you got it.
I'm gonna let y'all speak. Is there a second? Well, we don't have a second. All right, Mr. Warren.
So we did on that issue?
We ain't got a second right now. No.
I don't wanna speak on it if it's dead, man, there's no need of me. Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I saw this proposal this morning. I guess a few things that I'm bothered about is first and foremost the salary. There's nobody, the state attorney doesn't make that kind of money. There's nobody in the whole surrounding county that makes $160,000, from the judges to the state attorney to the public defender to the superintendent of schools, the prison wardens. There's nobody you can think of for $160, right? That's number one. Number two, if we're gonna offer this type of money, we've had other top flight candidates that we squalled about giving more money to, and they only wanted $140. And out of nowhere, I think the first thing to do, you go back to the candidate you picked first and woo him for $160. For $160,000, Mayor, for one, I've looked at your books, and my CPA have looked at your finance. You can't afford $160. You're talking about putting the taxpayers in a bad situation with all that we got going on. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Mayor, I think that you go back and if your price is gonna be $160, you give an opportunity to everybody. You re-advertise this whole $160. You don't just sing out one candidate and say, hey, look, we're willing to give $160 and we got it just packaged just for you, sir. No, at $160, no, there's no telling who you may get, man. $160, I mean, you're gonna bring out some CEOs from a lot of different places. A lot of people don't make $160. That's got some real good talent. And so I just think that we can't afford it. We shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be singling out one person. How we even know he's available? Who talked to him, Mayor? A lot of things, and this is the stuff, Mayor, that we find ourselves with a lack of transparency. We find ourselves in a bad situation from the podium, from the dices of like, what are we doing here? We want a good city manager, and we had an opportunity to get one. The guy that was standing up there, Mr. Henson, Jim, he never said anything about 160. He said you need to be between 130 and 140. I was sitting right in here in this meeting, and you guys were too. We can roll the tape back if we need to. He never said 160. That's unheard of, man. And all these other luxuries, I thank God that we didn't get a second. I think this is a very one-sided approach to getting the city mayor. I think it's a knee-jerk response and action because of how we're looking. If we've been at this for 9 months, Mayor, I think everybody has now suffered the pain to say, hey, look, keep the process going. We're already on the hook for the process. Let's see what's else out there. I think we can still get a good second, third string quarterback that this council and the directors can work with and build up. And Mr. Paul Dow, according to him, and Mr. Sampson and Mr. Hill asking him, he said he's willing to stay on as long as it takes for us to get a good candidate for us not to rush the process. Me personally, Mayor, we should wait until that seat that get filled so that every representation of every district have a say on who the next city manager is gonna be. Thank you.
Mr. Bowden?
Mr. Mayor, I promise you that it's not a conspiracy between me and Mr. Warren, even though he's definitely my good friend. Just so happen we agree on so many things. When we talk about the city manager, we often talk about what's in the best interest of the whole community. We also talk about a good fit. Now, I sat through every one of those interviews, the one online, by way of Zoom, in person. I came to the meet and greet. So I've been present to all of them, heard all the questions, all the answers, and everything else. I think that Mr. Adam and Mr. Thomas made that, found the top two of those four was a no-brainer. You know, they were just the top two of the four. The bottom two of them wasn't even worth being considered. So they were the two top people you interviewed. That doesn't mean that Mr. Adam is any more qualified than the gentleman that you all did not interview that would consider to be a good candidate from Pasco County. You know, my personal view, and this is my personal view, is that Mr. Adam is coming from Santa Fe, and I've said this before, from Santa Fe, Texas, a town where they don't have the minority, the black population of that town is so small that you can't even measure it. It's not even a good percentage point. So I'm concerned that a person who only had a year and 10 months in city manager government, yes, he has some experience as a military person. Yes, he worked at the missile range. But in city manager government, what I looked at, he only was a city manager for 1 year and 10 months. And how he left and why he left, I don't know. But at that time period, he was there. So as Mr. Hanson said, that it's always a concern when you get rid of city manager, you see somebody leave real quick. Well, you should have a concern about someone who's only been a city manager for 1 month and 1 year and 8 months. So I think that not only do you look at the qualification, you got to look at whether he is a good fit. And I would suggest to you that, given the interaction I had with him, the interaction some other people had with him, that he is not a good fit for our community.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I think we have some more to discuss here. So I'd like to make a motion that we terminate the contract with Narlock effective immediately and ask for our funds back because I've not seen any other candidates other than the first two we talked to that was worthwhile. Let's start over and put it out to bid and see if we can get a better headhunter maybe.
I think she's worked hard.
I make that as a motion.
Okay.
Well, before we can go there, I'm going back to Mr. Rosenthal. Mr. Rosenthal did his homework on coming to Lake City. And again, he's not asking $160,000. He would go from 130 to 140. He has the experience. He has a city manager background. So again, my vote would be to bring Mr. Rosenthal in.
Okay, well, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right. not a second, then we'll move on and see where we go.
Same pattern we've been in, Mayor.
Yep. Okay,
Mayor, let me speak. In reference to the proposal that is before us, I don't know whether applicant or whether candidate, Mr. Adams, whether he's asking that salary or we are proposing that salary to him. I don't know, but either way, a salary of $160,000 coming from Lake City, I think that is a salary that he needs to work up to, not to start him off with that salary. I don't know what kind of he qualified by virtue of his resume, but to function as a city manager, someone mentioned, and I saw it, I reviewed his resume, Mr. Bowden said that he only had a year and 9 months or something like that of actual city manager's employment. And I just feel that, offering that kind of salary for starters, and we don't know, I haven't had an opportunity for him to produce for us. I think it's a little bit beyond what I'm willing to commit, to him. And that's simply my take on it. Is the salary. The other items in here, those are items that, I can live with those, and those are some of the same things that we offered, in contracts with previous managers. But the salary is one of the primary concerns that I have.
Mr. Mayor, can I comment on that?
Sure.
So I've not talked to Mr. Adams at all, not since he sat right here and we talked to him here. I got the number based on a conversation that, and I don't know how y'all's conversations went, but he brought that number forward at the time when we were meeting with them, probably, the one-on-one, but,
right.
And that's where I came with the number. As far as that goes, I'm not even sure if he's interested. I know he didn't get the other job. I looked him up on LinkedIn. I saw he's still unemployed. He has other background that's pretty solid with the White Sands. That's a pretty impressive management there. And maybe if the number 160 doesn't work, I don't know. This job, I think, is probably going to be worth that. When you look at the 10 above, 10 below, we can spend less. We spent less in the past. We spent what Palatka spent. We got what Palatka got. A manager you had to fire. That's up to the board. I would be open to, this is just an offer. It's something I've been thinking about because he's the only other person out of the total of 7 people that we've talked to that I think is even partially qualified.
Well, maybe I'd like to say so. Now, again, this whole board agreed that Mr. Rosendorf, everybody, a sense up here agreed that Mr. Rosendorf was a better candidate of the last one. Mr. Rosendorf had a better interview than Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams, after we didn't choose him in the first go round, he wasn't interested because he said that we couldn't afford him. And we can't afford him. The city can't afford him. So again, Mr. Adams can stay in Texas for wherever he can stay there, for Jake Hill Jr. concerned. Mr. Rosendorf is Jake Hill Jr. choice for the next city manager. And again, we keep kicking this can down the road. This man is qualified to be the next city manager of Lake City. But the thing is, people, Mr. Rosendorf's skin is the wrong color.
Put in the motion, Jay.
I made that motion, it died.
Make it again.
So again, Mr. Rosendorf is my choice. And again, and if you just throw the color out of it, he's well qualified for this job. But the thing is, like I said in the last meeting, these certain people don't want this council to change. But trust me, people, I may not be a part of it, but change is coming. So Mr. Rosendorf I think he will be a great fit for Lake City. But again, it's just the color of his skin. And man, that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, I disagree with that, and I take exception to it because it's not correct. That's Mr. Hill's perception. That's not fact. So we sat here, we all talked to Mr. Rosenthal and 2 other candidates, and we did not come to a consensus to have a second interview with one of those 3 candidates. That's the fact. The fact is, we've had candidates from all races and genders, and we haven't found someone to hire yet, which it goes back to what I said about Ms. Narlock. Bring us a candidate that's worth whatever we can pay to hire them. I mean, if 160 is a problem, let's offer something less. Mr. Rosenthal may be fine. He was the best of those three, but none of those three were qualified.
He was more qualified than Mr. Adams.
Apparently, we don't have a consensus on either one of them, but I'd like to know if Mr. Adams was even interested.
But when
And I agree that we may
when a
have to
man
up the
tell you that
ante.
he don't wanna, if we didn't choose him, he don't wanna come here? And you wanna up his salary just for his service, he ain't worth all that.
Apparently, we're gonna agree tonight. So we'll just keep looking. Next is, Utility Advisory Committee, Mr. Sampson.
Mr. Coberline's office has sent out some guidance on the advisory committees in general. I think everybody got that in their email. There's some possibility that the makeup of the committees that give recommendations back to this council may not be correct, and how they work within the framework of the sunshine laws. And the utility committee is one of those. I know David Kraus brought that to our attention. I think that we need to change the makeup for sure. One thing I would like to do with the makeup is change it to where it's just the 4 elected officials. I understand the county has removed themselves. I'd like to leave those 2 positions open to them. In the future, they could come back. And then for the interim, just have the 4 elected officials. That way, everybody could still discuss with staff what's ongoing, because there's times we need to discuss things with staff from both directions that we can't do in this format. And I think we need to revisit more than just this committee. If you look, I think there's quite a few committees that need to be reviewed. But I would like to go ahead and get that change in place, because we're planning on having a meeting on the 27th of April, which is not this week, but next week. And so I would like to change that committee to be just the 4 elected officials. But we would still require staff to attend. So 2 city councilmen and 2 county commissioners. And I want to leave those 2 positions open for if they decide that they want to have that conversation.
So are you saying to add all the city council or leave it
No.
like it is?
I think leave the 2 that's on there, and except I would like to add you, Mayor, so that we have 3, and then leave open 2 positions for them.
The only problem I've had with the utility is we schedule a meeting a week or 2 out, and my schedule usually is conflicting on that. Just like the 27th, I'm not sure if I could or not, so if we could do it later, at 5, I definitely could.
We can be flexible on the time, I think. Is the time good for you if it's later, Mr. Jefferson?
Later will be okay with me.
So you're talking about next Wednesday?
The 27th, I believe it is.
27th?
Mayor,
Yeah.
Mr. Sampson, you can revise the committee composition as well as create additional committees, but you have to do it by resolution according to the rules that you adopted in 21.
Okay, so I think then what the right thing to do is to ask for a resolution at the next meeting to change it.
Right.
But we're still gonna hold the meeting, so I guess it'll be in the same format this time.
Go ahead and do it like you have it set now, and then we'll address it in the next meeting, and then we can
We
go.
probably need to go ahead and address the other committees as well.
Right. I agree with that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, for clarification, I know what Mr. Sampson said, when it comes to the elected officials, 2 and 2. But for clarification, I know there was some concern about violation of sunshine, and, with the committee as it was before.
Right.
Where does we sit with 2 and 2? As he suggested, we still have 4 elected officials on that committee. Are there any room for violation of the sunshine? And I guess that's a legal question. I guess I don't have the answer to that, but that was a concern before when that precipitated bringing this to this point? And I just don't know. I don't know whether we're alleviating the problem by these changes or whether that problem is gonna still exist. Because as I understand it, I don't have all the facts, but I think that was one of the precipitating reasons that the county wanted to pull out. It had to do with a violation of sunshine.
Well, Mr. Sanders, I think, we need Mr. Copeland and all to look at all the committees and let's, address it at the next meeting. Mr. Warren, I know you want to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to, excuse me, ask for clarification. Are we saying that we're having a joint utility committee meeting with just only the city being there and not the county? Is that what I'm understanding? So,
They said they ain't coming, so it seemed to just be city.
well, how's it a joint? How we having a joint meeting and the other joint party isn't gonna be there? When's that meeting, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, it's not a joint committee.
No.
It's the city utility
City
committee.
utility.
We
Oh, the
invited
city
them to
utility,
join
okay.
on.
I saw on the paper said joint committee meeting. Okay, so this is just the city.
Yeah, that's our committee.
I got you. The agenda's a little confusing.
We invited them to it.
Gotcha.
Okay. Mr. Lilford?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question. Did Mr. Sampson say he wants to put 3 city council members on the city utility committee? Is that what he said? That a yes?
Yes.
So that's a whole quorum. You have like a quorum of the city council.
I think what we're waiting on is Mr. Copeland to come up with a recommendation for a
We've
resolution.
had 3 city councilmen on the utility committee for years.
We've been probably doing it wrong for years.
Well, this is the utility advisory committee, but you can have you'll have a quorum of the city council. That's what Mr. Sampson's suggesting.
Well, that's why we're gonna look into it and get, his opinion on the sunshine and what's best for us, but I think that's something we need to think about and come back next
I
meeting.
mean, I guess you put the whole city council on it. Well, you have 4 now. I mean, you wouldn't even need a city council. The city council is the one that approves everything when it goes to the full city council. So why would you have a quorum of city council members? You wouldn't expect anybody to really change their mind at a city council meeting.
Well, like I said, we've done it before. The reason you have the utility committee is because there are big issues that need to be addressed and not just at these meetings, but at a time.
Right.
It's just,
I mean, then the city council ponders whatever decision the utility committee makes.
right,
But if you have a whole quorum there, there's not a heck of a lot to ponder. Thank you very much.
okay. So we'll do that at the next meeting. Next is Skinner. Yeah,
There needs to be a consensus as if the council wants a resolution coming back that reconfigures what type of members are on the committee. As an aside, Mr. Jefferson did not get a response to his question. And the response is that the Sunshine Law applies equally to the committees of the city, just as it does this council. So it's incumbent on the members of each committee to understand the Sunshine Law so that they know that outside of a meeting is where the Sunshine Law is violated, when they start to have a discussion with somebody else on the same committee. It's no different than if Mr. Jefferson decided that he was going to have a back and forth discussion with the mayor tomorrow outside of this meeting. So the Sunshine Law applies to the committee and the committee members. Mr. Krause's seating on the committee was not a per se or in and of itself a violation of Sunshine Law. I believe Mr. Krause was saying that he cannot continue to serve on the committee and work outside the meeting with others who are also on the committee unless he violates the Sunshine Law, so he resigned. So the answer to Mr. Jefferson's question is that Sunshine Law applies equally to the committees and their members. And to go further, the administration is working on setting up a meeting so that each of the committees can be reviewed. And as far as city employees on them, they will be asked, is the Sunshine Law an impediment to them doing their business outside of meetings? If it is, then we'll address the composition of those committees.
okay.
But
Alright, so
Let's go back. Do you want the composition of the committee to be changed? If so, let us know now so that we can have a resolution prepared for you.
y'all wanna discuss it in the next meeting, or you want a resolution?
We could discuss it the next meeting,
I think
put it
we
on
did.
for discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Okay, next is update on skate park. I've talked to Mr. Dial and, we're still working on the stadium, appraisal. We still got to take down the, building and, what else was it that you were telling me?
Well, basically, Mayor, I'm waiting on direction. I know it's, you all have said that that's the direction that you wanted to move, was with the skate park. Basically, we need to find out, work out the details, what plans we're gonna use. I know Mr. Warren, I think it said we could use Live Oaks plans. And if that's the case, we would need to get a set of those, but we would still have to have those certified probably by a local, contractor. Most plans, not gonna get built unless they're recertified, even if they have been before. Plus, we'll have to get a survey in to decide exactly where the skate park is gonna go, and all of that. But as far as right now, we're, behind on a lot of this stuff as far as, personnel to be able to take care of a lot of stuff. But generally, once we get the direction to move forward and we have the plans and we can get them recertified, we'll move forward. Right now, we're working on the permit to tear the building down and go through the due diligence on that. And as far as the stadium, you know, it was passed by council to go to North Florida professionals. They're working up a proposal and a list of all the things and a cost estimate to repair the stadium. So just as soon as, we can work out the fine details of getting a set of plans, we'll start moving forward.
Appreciate it. Mr. Warren, do you wanna speak?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it's like anything else, that's, even from last meeting, that's all we wanted to know was an update. There's a lot of people that's connected to skateboarding. I don't know how often you go out there in front of the Florida Highway Patrol, but there's a group of young folks now, they're using that area for skateboarding. If you're out around the lake, you see a lot of people in the evening, they're skateboarding. So there's a need for this community to have a skateboard park, and we're just trying to get an update and keep the momentum that we're gonna actually have it happen. Live Oak has 2, Brentford has 1. We're bigger than both of them put together, and we have 0. So we're just trying to see an update as to where we're at. We understand staff being behind. We just kind of want to hear back from you all as to how far along the process we were. That was it.
Thank you. Okay, next is discussion possible action fire pension board appointee. And also we have the possible action of police officer pension board appointee, and I still don't have a solution, and I don't know if anybody else has got any names. If not, we'll move on to resolutions, the city council resolution 2022-036. Mr. Caroline, can you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, accepting a utility easement from Cypress Lake Land Trust for the purpose of extending the sewer main.
Is there a motion of the city council resolution 2022-036?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for approval of City Council Resolution 2022-036.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Next, the city council resolution 2022-038. Mr. Caroline, can you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a contract with Career Source Florida Crown, providing for the implementation of the, quote, summer youth employment program, end quote, to include training and employment opportunities with the city from June 13, 2022 through July 29, 2022, and providing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion of the city council resolution 2022-038?
Mr. Mayor, I make,
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution number 2022-038.
second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is one of the best programs we do. I think it's a really good program, and Career Source has been a good partner.
I think so too. Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Next, the city council resolution 2022-039. Mr. Caroline, can you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, authorizing task assignment number 1 to the continuing contract with Demure Engineering LLC, providing for the extension of a water main and gravity sewer main into the Crosswind subdivision, providing for a cost not to exceed $44,750.00, and providing for an effective date. Here.
Is there a motion as to City Council Resolution 2022-039?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for approval of City Council Resolution 2022-039.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion?
Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witten?
Yes, no other items, Department of Administration is none, comments of council? If there's none, we'll be adjourned. Thank y'all for coming, thank y'all, good meeting.